Good morning. This morning's first reading is from the book of Isaiah, the 6th chapter. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The pivots on the threshold shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me! I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips. And I among a people of unclean lips, yet my eyes have seen the King of the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. This is the word of the Lord.
So today is apparently the day for action and sermons. So what you should have gotten when you came in is a piece of charcoal. So does everybody have that? Okay, so if you do, now is the time in the worship service where you need that, so go ahead and get it out. And you can, roll it around in your hands, check it out. It should probably basically look like, the charcoal briquette that you used last weekend for your Memorial Day cookout or yesterday at the yard sale. And I know that probably most of you are holding it in a napkin to keep your hands clean so you don't end up with completely filthy hands, which is fine. But now I would like you to take it and I would like you to rub it all over your lips.
What?
And so I know nobody's going to do it. This is the 3rd time I've done this sermon. You're all looking at me like you're convinced.
Some people did it last service.
Somebody did it last service, yeah. So I know you're all looking at me like you're convinced you made a mistake calling me as your pastor. But it could actually be worse. See, you lucked out. You only have dirty hands or a little dirt on your lips. You don't have these scalded, sooty lips that Isaiah has. I mean, this poor guy, right, who's in the first reading that we read today. Can you imagine what was going through his mind as these bizarre heavenly creatures? They look nothing, I'm sure. They look nothing like these sweet little angels that have angel wings that we see in the Hallmark stores, right? These bizarre heavenly bodies are dashing to and fro, encircling the face of God. As Isaiah, he stands there with all this going on above him, stands there under the weight of the hem of God's robe. I mean, just imagine how small he must have felt as the light from God's throne and face came streaming down upon him. And then as he's standing there, something happens to him. He suddenly feels unworthy and unclean and guilty to even be standing in the presence of God. And if that weight, if that guilt is not enough, suddenly one of these 6-winged creatures flies straight at his face with a searing coal and burns his lips with it. There is no way my reaction after that encounter would have been, ooh, send me God, I'm your man. Seriously, my reaction would have included a blood-curdling scream, and then I would have basically said, what in the heck, or something else just happened to me, and instead of longing to be sent by God, I would have hightailed it out of the temple before one of those devious seraphs uttered their next holy, holy, holy. Now the truth is, this is quite a vision, and it's really easy to get lost in the reality of it all. However, if we distill this experience of Isaiah's down to what it means for him, and what it means for humanity, and therefore what it means for us, I think what you'll find crashing about the subtext of this vision is something that doesn't just shake the temple on its foundation, but I think something that will sort of shake you at your core, in terms of how you understand your calling in the world. Woe is me, I am lost. Isaiah cries as he laments his human condition. Because Isaiah is a man with unclean lips. He is not exactly the ideal prototype for a prophet. He's called to proclaim, and yet he's categorically unequal to the task. I mean, what does it mean for Isaiah to be a prophet? A prophet, right? You know, he's a prophet. He's supposed to be able to speak about God with unclean lips. I mean, this is the crux of the vision. And if that's the case, then the question is, what does it mean for us to be people with unclean lips? Now, I think our inclination is to liken this unclean lips language with blatantly obvious sinful statements, like racial and hate statements, or cheap talk, or cruel gossip, or bold-faced lies. But that doesn't seem to be what's going on for Isaiah, and I don't think that that's the case for most of us. After studying Isaiah's predicament and lamenting the human condition like Isaiah, I told a close friend of mine that if I was really brave, I would preach on this inexplicable divergence, the incongruity between eyes and mouth, between head and heart. Or more specifically, basically, the difference between what we say and what we think. Right? This is often something that we struggle with. What I think is not actually always what comes out of my mouth. Because that seems pretty dangerous to do. So in some respects, this was never supposed to be a sermon. But the quandary of Isaiah remains, and the struggle is real. As a preacher, as a pastor, how do I speak of God when I have unclean lips? Because I know I do. And it's not that my lips are impure because of lies, although, I mean, truth be told, of course I have told lies in my life. But what makes my lips unclean as a pastor are my questions and my faltering beliefs and my insistent demanding more from God. Because my thoughts on God don't always mesh up on with my words about God. And my feelings for God don't always align with what other people expect me to feel as a pastor for God. I have unclean lips. And it's always been this way for me, ardently willing to work for God and proclaim the truths of God, while simultaneously wondering if the work even matters, or whether the truth is even heard, and for that matter, what the truth actually is. And the truth of the matter is, you deserve better than that. You deserve somebody that is steadfast in conviction and confident in her call, whose heart and voice and mind all align together. And let's be real. I mean, God deserves better than that, too. I know this for sure. But I also know that I'm fairly certain that God knows I am a pastor with unclean lips. Isaiah's vision is filled with vivid illustrations of divine transcendence and utter glory. But there is one thing that is totally misplaced and seems misused in this vision. And that's that piece of coal that you have in your hand. It's the one item that doesn't belong just as much as Isaiah doesn't belong. Just as much as I don't belong in the company of God. Coal. I mean, coal has come straight from the realm of heaven. Why is something as filthy and dirty as coal found in the keeping of God? I mean, I would have thought that it would have totally stained his shimmering robe, all that, glorious stuff that we hear in that reading, his shimmering robe, and totally tainted his hands. Additionally, this hot coal trick of atonement and cleansing certainly would not have held up in my systematic theology class. I mean, exactly how does coal take away sin? How does coal make one clean? Now, I don't know exactly how Isaiah looked after his encounter with the hot coal, but I imagine him with this big black smudge on his lips and probably some pretty painful blisters. But there on his lips was physical evidence to everyone that he encountered that he did have dirty lips. There's no hiding it now. For me, it is risky and scary somewhat to admit that my belief wavers and my questions seem often louder than my resolve. Because I worry that I'll taint your hearing of God, or tarnish your belief, or stain your view of me or of the church. And from a selfish perspective, when I voice these questions, I worry that I'll mess up my children's faith. In some ways, these things should be an impediment to my call. However, it's also true that admitting the garbage we carry is honest, and it's pure, and that's clean. And I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that Isaiah's lips are dirty at the end of the reading because God made them dirty. Apparently, redemption isn't dependent upon cleanliness or purity or perfection of word or thought. So I feel like I'm in luck. I love this reading from Isaiah, which means so are you. And I guess that's the reason I decided to preach the sermon I said I wouldn't. Because the question is not only, what would it mean to be a prophet or a pastor with unclean lips? But also, what would it mean to be a teacher with unclean lips? Or a police officer, or a scientist, or a student, or a writer? Or maybe more importantly, what would it mean to be a parent with unclean lips, or a grandparent, or a brother, or a sister, or a friend? I mean, the list could go on and on, but I suggest you take however you define yourself and put yourself in that sentence. What would it mean to be a with unclean lips? Last night at the 5 o'clock service on Saturday, Richard Farrar told me that he had never been told that he had dirty lips before. He had certainly been told that he had a foul mouth, but not dirty lips. So here may be your first time to be told in church that you have a dirty lips. But the question that arises from that is, where do your dirt and failings fit into God's call upon your life? And that's a question we don't ask very often. Often we think about call, we think about what our passion is, or where our talents lie, and that's what drives our call. We don't think about our weaknesses, our failings, or our dirt driving our call, or driving how we speak about God. However, there is one defining law about God found throughout the Bible, and that is that dirt cleanses dirt. Because God died in a messy way, and he stained his whole world with blood and sweat and tears, not just charcoal smudges. Now, you and I both know that what Isaiah recounts is a vision. It's not an exact reality. However, the stunning proclamation within this revelation is that the unclean are conjoined to the clean, and that the unholy is held within the holy, and the common is bound to the divine. So maybe the holiest thing we can do when we speak for God is to utter that which blisters our lips, or stains our tongues, or strangles our throats. Because here is what I know. There is somebody else out there who has the same stain on their lips as you do, and they are convinced that it places them outside the grace of God. And the vision of Isaiah is that all are found within the grace of God, and all belong. What if, despite our imperfections, we are the holy coal of God placed in the seraph's hands to cleanse the world? What if I'm supposed to be a pastor with unclean lips? What if you're supposed to be you with unclean lips? Well, that may not make any sense to us. God does seem to enjoy using the dirt in the whole redemption of life process. And God gets dirty with us and uses our dirt to cleanse not only us, but others also. And if still you have any doubts about this charcoal thing, I offer the cross. It was the dirtiest moment in the history of the universe, and stands to this day as a proclamation of the only things which have ever purified the soul, let alone the lips. Forgiven and loved, and therefore whole.